I think my number one tip would be to relax and chew food properly. So make time for eating and look at your food, smell your food, sit down and chew it properly, because a lot of people skip that phase, and that's a really important stage of digestion. That's a cephalic stage that involves all the head. So seeing food, smelling food, even hearing it being cooked. So I think just taking time to enjoy your food, relax and chew it properly, because that can alleviate many, many digestive symptoms.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode, and I'm so excited for my next guest who's joining us from all the way across the pond. She lives in York. She is a health writer, a registered nutritional therapist and nutritionist. And welcome, Sally Duffin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about York. I love that you live there, and what got you into your own wellness journey?
Okay, so York is a beautiful city in the north of England. We've got just loads of history. Just walking around the city, you're just basically walking through a history book. We've got Viking stuff, we've got Romans, medieval, we've got a huge cathedral in the middle, lots of beautiful parks. It's just a gorgeous place to live. Yeah, lots of little independent shops and things. I've lived here all my life.
So I will tell you, I have a lot of friends who are gluten-free, and they cannot have gluten here in the United States. But they say that when they go to France or they go to England, they go, in Germany, they can eat gluten and they feel great. They have no problems at all.
Wow.
So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, because I'd have thought that it would be the same issue wherever they go.
So let me ask you, do you have any problems yourself personally with gluten intolerance?
I'm wheat intolerant, but to be honest, gluten, well, I know it will be doing something to me, but I don't get any symptoms from it. So I'm okay with things like barley and rye, but I do avoid wheat. I'm sensitive to the other proteins that are in wheat.
So what happens, what are some of your symptoms that happen when you personally eat wheat?
If I eat wheat, so because I've avoided it now for so long, I've avoided it for about 5 years. I can sometimes get away with just having, the odd thing. If I'm out and there's only sandwiches to eat, then, sometimes I'll be okay. But other times, if I did start to eat it regularly again, I'd get very bloated. So by the end of the day, I'd have a little pot belly. I would get very tired. And sometimes even now, if I eat wheat, it has such a soporific effect on me. I almost feel like I've been drugged and that I just want to sleep. I have to sleep it off. So those are the two main symptoms, really. And also, it just makes me crave more sweet things. It's weird. If I eat some wheat, I will be craving more sugary foods a few hours later.
That is true, for sure. So in my newest edition of my book, Waste Away, I talk about how people don't need to deprive themselves when it comes to food, but everyone needs to decide for themselves what are their red light, yellow light, and green light foods. And what I mean by that is red light means you absolutely, kind of like your wheat, like you say, I'm just not eating this. I know when I eat it, I feel terrible. And then I have my yellow light foods where I go, I don't feel great when I eat this, but sometimes I'll have it. What are those red and yellow light foods for you personally?
Okay, so for me, wheat is definitely a red light food, like I've just been saying. The other two, I guess, would be caffeine. I can't go anywhere near caffeine. I stopped drinking it many, many years ago. And now even if somebody accidentally gives me a decaf tea, I will know about it. And the other one would be most dairy products as well. So I can get away with a little bit of butter. I use butter in cooking, but if I, try to drink a glass of milk or something like that, because I'm a bit lactose intolerant, so I would get a lot of digestive symptoms and also some indigestion from it as well. So I really try and stay clear from that.
Yeah, in the same way. So if you had to pick your top 3 nutrition tips for listeners, what would they be and why?
Okay, I think my number one tip would be to relax and chew food properly. So make time for eating. Look at your food, smell your food, sit down and chew it properly, because a lot of people skip that phase, and that's a really important stage of digestion. That's a cephalic stage that involves all the head, so seeing food, smelling food, even hearing it being cooked. So I think just taking time to enjoy your food and relax and chew it properly, because that can alleviate many digestive symptoms, partially, sometimes wholly, just by relaxing and chewing food properly. So that would be my number one tip. Number two would be to start to tune in to how you feel after what you've eaten. So rather than just blithely eating everything that you normally do and, you know, kind of just plowing on through no matter what your symptoms are, maybe try keeping a food diary for a couple of weeks, and just noticing if any of your signs and symptoms tie in with certain foods. Because once you tune in to how your body feels after eating certain things, it opens up a lot more information for you, and you can make much more wise decisions about foods and your food choices. So that would be my number two tip. And then the last one, I think, would be to buy the best quality food that you can. We get so used to food being cheap that we think it should be cheap, and it shouldn't actually. It should cost a fair amount of our wage packet if we're buying good quality food. And I know it depends on what your income level is, but I think just buying the best that you can, because we only have one body and we've got to give it the best nourishment that we can if we want to live a healthy life. So really just investing as much as you can in good food.
I love the fact that you said, you know, in my book, I talk about slowing down and savoring the food. And I would say that that is something that, even though, you know, I've interviewed all these women and that is what they say of just how slow they eat. Yeah. I would say that is so, so important. I still to this day, like, so if you look at a spectrum, like I used to literally inhale my food. Like, I mean, like, you know, just like as fast as I possibly could, because I do everything fast. I talk fast, I walk fast, I move fast. You know? And so even still to this day, you know, I've gotten so much better. I mean, I eat so much slower. I really savor my food, but I'm still not where I need to be as far as I'm still eating too fast, and I'm still not savoring and chewing my food to the level that I have seen people who have great digestion and really have mastered the art of savoring. I don't feel like I've mastered that. I'm so much better, but I'm definitely, and I love that that was your number one tip. Yeah. So tell us a little more about nutrition in York. Like, what is its core mission, and how do you gear it to meet each individual's client's specific needs?
Okay, so my own kind of mission has always been about empowering people, sharing the information that I've learned so that they can make good choices themselves. They can have that knowledge to take charge of their own health and actually feel that they're doing something about their health, because quite often people feel powerless, especially when they've got chronic ill health problems. They feel that they're at the mercy of the medics, when actually there's so much that we can do with food. So it's always been a big issue for me to be empowering people and sharing the knowledge. So I started my clinic 10 years ago, so I've been in practice 10 years. And after a short while, I then joined an education team at a supplement company so that I could help people to train to do this. And I've carried that on, and I do a lot of education work now as well. And it's part of why I enjoy writing as well. So if people can't necessarily get to see a clinician one-on-one, then they can read things, you know, doing like your brilliant podcast that's reaching a lot of people, going on the radio, anything like that, just to spread the message, and people will pick up tips along the way, and that inspires them to start their own journey as well. And I've had several clients who've worked with me one-on-one and then gone on to become a student on the college course where I work, and they've trained to become practitioners themselves because they've just enjoyed the benefits. They've seen how transformative it can be, changing what you eat and doing your nutrition. So in terms of how I kind of tailor it to each client, my business is transitioning a little bit now, and I don't really do a lot of one-on-one work now. But when I did, it would be very much about finding out what someone's aims were and really personalizing my recommendations to suit them and their lifestyle, so that no two clients would be getting the same recommendations. It would be unique to that person. And now with doing a lot more workshops and writing work and things, when people join my Facebook group, there are two simple questions I ask them to answer. and it's what interests you about nutrition and what do you find challenging about nutrition. So then I already know what problems people are facing, so I can then tailor my content to help them overcome those challenges. And just talking to people at workshops and finding out what they're struggling with and trying to point them in the right direction and give them the resources that they need.
And so talk to everyone. I know we talked about gluten. What exactly, for people who don't know, why is it so hard for people now to struggle, why they struggle to digest gluten? And what does gluten do exactly when we eat it? Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, certainly. So gluten, the main source of gluten for most people is in wheat, because a lot of people have a wheat heavy diet with that bread, pizzas, things like that. So the wheat that we have now is very, very different to the wheat that was grown even kind of 50 years ago, because it's been crossbred and hybridized and altered, and it's got a different protein content. It's much, much higher in gluten. And this is to support the bread making industry, because a higher gluten content is one of the ways in which that they can make bread faster, so they can get a loaf of bread onto the shelf faster, rather than having to stick with the traditional long fermentation time that you have to do with traditional bread making techniques. We as humans, we're not equipped to handle that level of gluten. The gluten is there as a storage protein for the grain, and it is very tough to digest, and that's because it's there to nourish the grain. It's not there to nourish us at all. So we don't really have the enzymes in our digestive system to break that gluten down. And when we eat gluten, and it has this effect in everybody, is that it increases the permeability of the lining of your gut. So it stimulates more zonulin to be produced, which increases the permeability, the gaps between the cells in our intestines. So then we get things passing through into our bloodstream that we shouldn't have passing through. And this is one of the ways in which various autoimmune diseases can be triggered. If you have good digestive health, then that permeability is repaired fairly quickly, but so many people don't have good digestive health. They've got imbalances in their gut microbiome, and their gut integrity is compromised pretty constantly. And if you've got this drip feed of gluten coming in all the time, then that gut permeability is never really getting a chance to be dealt with properly. And then this can kind of, in the words of one doctor, it just opens the doorway to inflammation. If you're constantly eating gluten and your digestion can't handle it, you are just opening the doorway to inflammation in your body. So this is why it is linked with so many different health conditions as well.
And now for you personally, do you eat any kind of bread, and what kind do you do? Like, some people say, I can do sourdough bread because, that fermentation process reduces gluten levels, or is there anything that you do to eat bread, or do you avoid it at all cost?
I don't have very much bread at all, and when I do, I go for a wheat-free and gluten-free loaf. I do sometimes maybe have some sourdough if I'm eating out somewhere, and that's the only thing that they've got is a traditionally made sourdough. But that's not brilliant for me still, because I have more of a problem with the other wheat proteins rather than the gluten. So whilst the gluten levels are much lower in traditional sourdough, you've still got some of the other proteins there as well. So I won't have a lot of that at all, maybe kind of 1 or 2 slices at the most, and that would be a one-off for me. So I tend to just eat a regular gluten-free, wheat-free loaf. I have to say, I have tried making them myself, and I'm absolutely rubbish at baking and all things like that, so I just don't bother. Even in a bread machine, I managed to get it wrong and it came out like a brick. So I do buy ones from the store, and I don't buy very big ones, or I'll keep it in the freezer and just get a couple of slices out when I want to.
So why do you think some people do better? Talk about the sourdough process of why some people might be able to have like a sourdough bread, but they can't have a piece of regular bread.
It's to do with the fermentation process. So sourdough bread, traditionally made, only has about 3 or 4 ingredients in, and you get the sourdough starter, and that kickstarts the fermentation process of the grain. And it's all the microbes that are in that sourdough starter. So it's a bit like when you've got a starter to make yogurt, it's the bacteria that then turn the milk into yogurt. With sourdough starter, you've got the bacteria that are helping to ferment the grain, and it provides its own natural rise to it as well. And there's there've even been studies done. One study was done in Italy a few years ago where they used the traditional sourdough process on regular wheat grains, and it had less than 20 parts per million of gluten in by the time it was finished. So it could actually be classified as gluten-free in some countries because that was low enough gluten content, and that was simply through the sourdough fermentation process. They've not done anything else to it at all. So it's to do with the time that these microbes take to actually start breaking the grain down, and they break down the gluten, so then it's not such a problem for us when we're eating it.
Now, the question I ask all my guests, take me through a normal day in the life of Sally. Like, what did you eat yesterday? When did you eat it? Did you work out? And kind of what did your day look like?
Okay, so yesterday, it's Tuesday, so I go running twice a week, but yesterday it wasn't a running day, so I did a yoga workout when I got up in the morning. And so I love yoga, I've been doing it for years, and on Tuesday mornings I have a little bit more time, so I tend to do a longer yoga practice of about 45 minutes or something. So I did that first, and then I had my breakfast, which was about 3 or 4 tablespoons of cooked apple, stewed apple, organic apples, and I had that with some sugar-free granola. It's granola that was made with honey, and I had some organic live soya yogurt and nuts. I always chuck a good poundful of nuts onto that as well. So that was all mixed up. Nice warm apple with the cold yogurt. Then at lunchtime, actually yesterday was unusually a vegetarian day for me. I'll often have kind of a vegetarian meal, but not a whole day. But my friend had made a lovely vegetable curry and a dal for me the day before, and I had leftovers. So I had leftover lentil dal with some rice and some rocket and salady bits for my lunch at work. And then for tea, we had a small baked potato with plenty of Sri Lankan vegetable mixed curry with that, and that was my tea. Yeah. And actually I had a cake yesterday as well. Yes, I met a client in the afternoon to do an interview, and I treated myself and had a plum oat crumble kind of cake thing. Yeah, that was my treat.
Well, I have, if you go to my site, go to chantelrayway.com/recipes. I have the best granola recipe. It's made with a little bit of honey, but it is to die for. Like, anyone who's made it, and you have to follow the recipe exact, because you have to take the granola, take it out of the oven, and then put it back. It's easy to do, but you have to follow it exact. And I'm telling you, it will be the best granola you've ever had. So
I have to try that because I make my own, and yeah, if yours can beat mine, then I will definitely switch over.
I'm obsessed with granola. I love it. Well, let's jump right into the listener questions.
Yeah.
This first one is from Corey in Stafford. Hi there. Love the podcast and the book. Question though, I have adrenal fatigue and really struggled with 16-hour fasts even. Got debilitating headaches several days a week for several weeks. Then I heard from 2 different nutritionists that they don't recommend fasting with adrenal fatigue since it adds more stress to your body. Just wondering what your take is. Now, do you personally do any fasting at all yourself?
The most I will do is a 12-hour overnight fast. Yeah, that's it. And certainly for someone like Corey with the adrenal fatigue, I definitely wouldn't recommend anything longer than a 12-hour fast at all, because it's simply putting more stress on your adrenal glands. So if you've got adrenal fatigue, they're already massively overworked. But if you're fasting for a long time, it can be that your body's needing to try and produce more cortisol to mobilize any stored sugars in your muscles. And if you've got adrenal fatigue, it's already struggling to produce enough cortisol. So please just give your adrenals a rest, and maximum 12 hours, and do that overnight so that you're already resting as well, but no longer than that.
Yeah. And I think that what she needs to do is really try to get down to the root cause of what is going on with the adrenal fatigue, because for me, I have literally seen people who have had adrenal fatigue, and they, I believe intermittent fasting literally improves people's hunger and fullness, improves their blood sugar affecting hormones. It has so many benefits of it, but you have to get your body to adjust. So it's like if you go from, if you already have adrenal fatigue and now you're doing longer fasts, your body is, you're right, it's going to put it into a stress state. But I believe that you can work your way up to it. And I believe that the fasting can help you. So my suggestion for her would be maybe bring your make your eating window longer, but then slowly start decreasing it. And the debilitating headaches, that is probably caused from some sort of food sensitivity that she's having. So I would really dive into what is that food sensitivity that she's having, because I don't believe that the headaches are causing, if she's eating, if she's only doing a 16-hour fast, that's not going to get her to a debilitating headache. That's got to be a root cause of something else. So we have to figure out what that root cause is.
Yeah, it could be. And it certainly could be to do with inadequate magnesium levels as well, because your adrenals need a lot of magnesium to function. And one sign of magnesium deficiency is headaches. So I'd certainly look into that as well.
Yeah, so let's expand on that just a little bit, because I personally believe I have a little bit of a magnesium deficiency as well. Talk about what your favorite your favorite magnesium supplement would be and how they would take that.
Okay, so there's a few, and I think it depends on the person as well. So magnesium citrate would be one that I would generally start with. And if someone has very good digestion, then a capsule would be okay. Sometimes a lot of the people I've seen don't have very good digestion, and magnesium is a little bit of a diva when it comes to being absorbed. It likes the microbiome to be in balance before it will be properly absorbed. So if anybody's got IBS or anything like that, then maybe look at a transdermal form of magnesium first of all. So using Epsom salts in the bath, that can help, and a magnesium spray. So there's quite a few good transdermal magnesium sprays that can be used. So you're absorbing the magnesium through your skin first of all. That can be used alongside a tablet as well, just a lower dose tablet or capsule, just to try and get magnesium in through two different avenues, as it were. Magnesium glycinate is very good, particularly if you are wanting to support the kind of the calming side of the nervous system. So if somebody's very hyperactive or overstimulated, anxious, then the magnesium glycinate can be helpful, because it's magnesium bound to glycine, which is a calming neurotransmitter for the brain. And so that would be another good form as well. I tend to avoid the magnesium oxide, the cheaper form, simply because it can have a laxative effect for people, and that's generally not what they want. But yeah, so I would tend to go citrate or glycinate, and also consider the transdermal forms as well.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the other things for magnesium deficiency for this lady, maybe she would say, okay, are you fatigued? Obviously, she has the headaches. Does she have digestive trouble? Is she having trouble with sleeping? Does she have brain fog or constipation? Then, magnesium deficiency might be a big factor for her.
Definitely.
What do you think about testing for magnesium, like in their blood levels, and doing a magnesium RBC test?
I tend not to do the blood test side of things, because your body will keep levels of minerals within very tight parameters within the blood. So it's not always a very accurate reflection of what's going on at a cellular level. But I have used the urine tests that do like the organic acid tests. So it's a simple urine sample one, which looks at the metabolic markers that show how well you are using these minerals and vitamins in your system. So that can be a good way to look at actually how your body is using magnesium. Is it functionally being used? Because we do see a difference between blood samples and actually how stuff is being used in the system. And B12 is another good example of that. Your body will keep vitamin B12 within very tight parameters. But if you then check methylmalonic acid in the urine, that can tell a very different story to what the serum B12 is doing. So I tend to favour the urine tests that give more of a functional answer.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good idea to check people's vitamin D levels, because since magnesium and vitamin D depend on each other for function and absorption, to making sure they're not just getting vitamin D, but also getting that magnesium. So that might really help.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far, but as you know, I've interviewed over 1,000 women, and every time I've watched a thin eater eat, I realize that maintaining a healthy weight is a skill that can be taught and mastered over time. That's why I created a video course that will teach you all the tips that I learned to help me lose over 30 pounds. It's way more powerful to watch the thin eaters than even to listen or to read it. Go to chantelrayway.com/video for a free glimpse. If you're wanting to take yourself to the next level, everyone needs a coach. Every professional player has a coach. We want to come alongside you and help you in your journey. Go to chantelrayway.com/coaching. I just had someone listen to the audiobook 3 times, and she just emailed me and she said by her listening to the audiobook 3 times, that's what did it. That's what allowed her to really lose the weight. We have an amazing offer for you. It's the 2nd edition of my book, which has tons more information. It has the audiobook, the ebook. It normally runs for $29.99. You can get it today for $4.99. Go to chantelrayway.com/deal to get it. Now back to the show.
Yeah. All right. This next one is from Ashley in New London. I wonder where New London is. I don't know. I don't know what city that is. It says, I have become obsessed with listening to your podcast. Thank you. My question is, my sister's daughter has terrible eczema. She's 19 months and has been food allergy tested, and it all came back normal. I've been trying to help her out by suggesting things like a safer detergent, non-alcoholic lotions, etc. What can she do to get the root cause of eczema? Ashley in New London.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would want to know what kind of food allergy test was done there. Was it a skin RAS test? Was it a blood test? What were they looking at in the blood? Were they just looking at IgE for full-on allergic response, or were they looking at IgG, which is more associated with the sensitivities and intolerances? But equally, because the little girl is under 2, I wouldn't always place that much emphasis on that result. And certainly wouldn't do an IgG test on a child under 2 anyway, because the immune system is still developing, so it's not going to give you a clear, accurate picture. I would consider, well, certainly doing a food diary to see what the little girl is eating, to see if you can kind of pick up on anything that inflames it even more, or if things get better at certain points. There's quite a bit of research looking at dairy with childhood eczema, so you could even experiment with going dairy-free for perhaps a month and see if that makes a difference, and obviously looking at other food sources of things like calcium so that she's not going to miss out on anything. But a lot of the dairy-free milks tend to be fortified with calcium these days anyway, so that could be something to consider and certainly discuss with the doctor. The dairy alternatives would be an interesting one. I would do that first, and then, I mean, there's other things that can be an intolerance and a sensitivity that won't necessarily show up on a test as well. So things like histamine foods can often provoke eczema, even salicylate foods that are high in salicylates, that can be linked with eczema as well. I would start with the dairy because that is quite a common trigger for childhood eczema, but I would keep in mind that there are other things in foods that can cause problems, things like eczema, that won't necessarily show up on a standard blood test. And in terms of what she could eat to try and ease it, then it would be very much an anti-inflammatory diet, and one that's got plenty of the good fats in there as well. So we need lots of the omega-3, 6 and 9 to help with the cell membranes, to help reduce the inflammation and support the skin health there. And things like zinc, vitamin A, all your colourful fruits and vegetables that are packed with all the different antioxidant compounds as well that help to manage inflammation in the body. And so those are the areas that I would start with, really. And it can take time, unfortunately, with childhood eczema. It's not always an overnight thing.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely do an elimination diet. I would try to do dairy, eggs, gluten, wheat, soy, tomatoes, and I would also look at citrus fruits, because I've had a lot of people who have emailed in with questions, and they say that citrus fruits actually flare up their eczema.
Yeah, I wouldn't do all of those at once though, because we've got to remember she's 19 months old.
Yes, true.
So I was definitely doing one at a time, and I would start with the dairy.
What helps. Yeah, for sure. And then I have heard that people with eczema, especially if it's on their hands and feet, that they benefit from eating foods that don't contain nickel. And nickel is found in like trace amounts in the soil and can be like in some of the foods. And some of that is like in nuts, seeds, some canned meats, chocolate. Yeah, I would look at some of that. So, but I definitely would say, trying that elimination diet is really the best thing, and taking out certain things and seeing if that improves for sure.
Yeah, taking them out one at a time and really focusing on things that, she can have as well. It's difficult with kids, it really is, because quite often they're picky eaters anyway, or they've got a limited diet and they're not, they've not got the same mindset as an adult has, who thinks, okay, I don't really want to eat quinoa, but, this is going to do me good while I'm avoiding something else. If a child doesn't want to eat quinoa, you're not going to get it in them. So sometimes, you've got to make a little bit of compromises there.
Yes. And then she said, I've been also trying to help her out by suggesting things like safer detergent, non-alcoholic lotions. What are some of your favorite products as far as detergents go, organic detergents, or any kind of lotions or products that you love?
So here in the UK, we've got Ecover. I don't know if you guys have it in America. Ecover and EcoLeaf. They're two lovely detergents that are, very ethical, but also just minimum chemicals in there as well. Using things like these laundry bowls that you can get that they don't have any detergent in, or some have natural soaps in from plants as well. So they're basically just helping with the friction of your washing in the water. So they're just 100% chemical free. So, there's nothing in there whatsoever. That could be helpful. In terms of the lotions, usually with eczema, it's good to have like 2 or 3 and rotate between them so the skin doesn't get used to them. Aloe vera can be very helpful because that's just so wonderfully soothing, and the polysaccharides in there really support the skin health anyway. Jason's, do you have Jason's in America?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good skin brand. Yeah, they do really nice aloe vera cream. A nice calendula cream. If you've got a herbalist that can put together a calendula cream, that's marigold, that's incredibly soothing and healing for any kind of skin condition, and it's very, very simple on the skin, lovely for babies and children. So I'd look for a calendula one as well.
Yeah, I was using this brand called 7th Generation, and it was free and clear and had no scents. And he was like, I need to get something with some kind of scent. He's like, I don't like smelling my towel and it doesn't smell good. So they do have one that's like a fresh lavender scent, and it is made with all essential oils. Wow. Which is good. But yeah, I wouldn't touch like regular laundry detergent, like a Tide or any of those, to save myself.
And I certainly would try and stay clear of the steroid creams as well, because they just, cause problems further down the line, or anything that's got a paraffin base to it as well. Just not great. You're going to destroy the skin's natural oil barrier with that.
All right, this is from Kayla in Grand Rapids. I'm getting married in 7 months and going on my honeymoon in Bora Bora. I can't wait, but I really want to look good in my bathing suit, and I need to get 6-pack abs. How should I eat to get 6-pack abs? Kayla in Grand Rapids.
Wow, well, congratulations, Kayla. That sounds exciting. The first thing that makes me think about is, do you actually really need 6-pack abs for your wedding? Because that is a lot of pressure to put on yourself, and you don't want to lose the focus of this, all the excitement that's going to be building up to your wedding and what the wedding is actually about, So by all means, try and get fit and healthy, but please don't lose perspective on what this day is and what this day means for you, because you can still have an amazing honeymoon without 6 packs in your abs. I had a wonderful honeymoon and my stomach is nowhere near a 6-pack. So great idea, but please keep it in perspective. I don't want you to lose out on the enjoyment of what this the day and the honeymoon is all about. I think really this is partly nutrition, but also exercise. I mean, if you want six-pack abs, there's going to be a lot of vigorous exercise routine to stick to there. So if you're not already in a gym, then joining a gym or getting a personal trainer or something like that is going to be really important for you to stay focused and to have a plan to develop your exercises to get to that point. In terms of what you're eating, then, well, I mean, it's a good balance of everything, but certainly looking at the fats. So a good balance of healthy fats, because the fats will help your metabolism, to help stimulate your metabolism so that you will burn more fats effectively. So if we're talking about converting fat into muscle, then certainly looking at your intake of essential fatty acids, that's going to be really helpful. Eating things such as grass-fed beef and the full-fat dairy, because they contain your conjugated linoleic acid, which is something that can help if you're training to do that conversion of fat to muscle. So it helps with the muscle building. Looking at your protein intake, obviously, because we need that for healthy muscles when you're training. And also the antioxidants, which are often overlooked when people are trying to lose weight or tone up. Your fat cells store a lot of toxins, so it is really important to make sure you've got a really good intake of antioxidants, because once you start breaking down those fat cells, you're releasing toxins into your system. So again, this comes back to your brightly coloured fruits and vegetables, mainly the vegetables, because they've got a higher content. Making sure you are eating a rainbow, a good 7 servings of veg every day, maybe a couple of fruit as well, just to make sure you've got a really good supply of the antioxidants. And again, that helps with recovery after training as well. So things like delayed onset muscle soreness, if you've got plenty of antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E in your system too. So those are the main areas I'd be looking at. And obviously cutting out all refined processed foods, refined sugars, everything like that. Not necessarily going completely carb free, because you do need carbs for your energy levels. So, but just looking at your portion size there and keeping that in balance with everything else that you're having. And good luck.
And I remember you saying that you said butter is something that you do okay with. And I saw on your site you had a great recipe for how to make homemade ghee. Talk about how someone does that, how to make homemade ghee, and why is that a little bit better than butter for some people?
So the ghee is pretty much pure butter fat. So it's taken out the proteins, and it's taken out, you can never 100% guarantee, but it's taken out nearly all the lactose, the milk sugar. So it's often suitable for people that are lactose intolerant like me. And it's very easy to make your own ghee. So just buy a good block of good quality grass-fed dairy butter, organic if you can, and you chop it up into little cubes, and then you start to melt it gently. And you keep an eye on it, just stirring it every now and again, and it will go through various stages of bubbling up, and then the bubbles will calm down, and then it will bubble up again, and you'll start to see this reddy coloured sediment at the bottom of the pan. And once that has formed, and you've had that second round of bubbles come up, then it's ready to strain, and you strain it through cheesecloth or a very, very fine mesh into a jug, and then pour it in a sterilised jar, and you leave it to set. And it's just wonderful. Your kitchen will smell like popcorn when you make ghee. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it will just set, and then that's it. There's your ghee. You're good to go with the cooking.
Awesome. And how often do you make that?
Oh, when I get time, really. I haven't got any in the kitchen at the minute, but I keep buying the butter, thinking, yep, this weekend I will make some more ghee.
Yeah. And because you don't feel terrible when you eat it, so you're like, okay, I can. And you can buy ghee.
Yeah, and I don't use a lot of butter in cooking anyway. I tend to cook more with coconut oil. So yeah, and the little bit of butter I do use, I can tolerate that absolutely fine. But just, yeah, ghee adds a different element if you're doing an Indian dish, for example, because that's what they would traditionally use. So frying your spices in ghee is just an amazing smell and taste. Yeah.
Okay, this one's from Laura in Chesapeake. Recently, I've been getting really bad heartburn. I notice it more whenever I eat anything that contains chicken, grilled chicken, fried chicken, even just a little portion of shredded chicken mixed in with other foods. I never used to get it, then suddenly I get it almost all the time. I've tried taking over-the-counter medicine to help, but it doesn't really do much for my symptoms. Is there anything on the more natural side that I can take to help prevent this? Also, is there any reason I specifically only get it whenever I eat chicken? Laura in Chesapeake.
Oh, Laura, this is a bit of a puzzler. I mean, there's no reason why I can think of that it would just be specifically chicken, but then also why not? You know, we all have different ways in which we can tolerate things. So it may be that chicken is a trigger for you for heartburn. One thing I was thinking about was, is it very fatty chicken that you're having? Because very fatty foods, they do stimulate a production of something called cholecystokinin, which is part of our digestive process, and you're producing it anyway, but you get higher amounts of it produced in response to very fatty foods, and that can relax the ring of muscle at the top of your stomach, so that may be accommodating a little bit more of the reflux and the heartburn. So that's just a thought in case it is very fatty, because I know you mentioned that it happens when it's fried as well, so yeah, I would expect that to do that then. Coming back to what we talked about earlier, are you taking time to eat? Are you relaxed when you're eating? Are you chewing your food properly? Because if not, and if you're eating in a hurry, then the signals aren't being sent to your stomach to get ready for food. So food will arrive and it will suddenly have to produce a flush of stomach acid. And sometimes this can mean that too much is produced, and also the little ring of muscle, the sphincter of muscle at the top of your stomach doesn't close properly, and then you can get a little bit more kind of heartburn, a bit more reflux coming back up. So I definitely look at your eating habits to make sure you are relaxing, sitting down to eat, sitting down and sitting still for a few minutes after you've eaten as well, to allow the food to pass down comfortably to your stomach, and to make sure that's happening. In terms of remedies that you could use to support it, one of my favourite ones for heartburn is something called silicol gel. Do you guys have it over there?
I haven't heard of it.
You might have an equivalent. It's just silica gel. That's it really. It's very, very plain. And the silica helps to coat and soothe all the digestive tract, so right the way through from mouth, right the way through to rectum. So it's good for any kind of inflammation or irritation at any point in your digestive system, but it's really cooling and soothing for heartburn and reflux. So that would be an option. Also, a very good quality aloe vera juice can help as well. So using that regularly can again help with the heartburn symptoms. Using digestive bitters before you eat, that's a real favourite of mine, because that helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, which tells the stomach to get ready for food, and it also help to tone that ring of muscle at the top of your stomach as well. So maybe looking at things like centauri, yarrow, dandelion, and there's quite a few different digestive bitters, and you can get them in combinations as well. And they do taste really bitter, that is the point. So you have to just hold it in your mouth for a minute or so, let that bitter taste work, and then swallow it. If it's really persistent and if this gets worse, then I would definitely see a practitioner, because it could be worth being checked out for Helicobacter pylori, just in case you've got an overgrowth of that, because heartburn is one of the symptoms of that as well.
And then another idea would be for her to take HCl, betaine HCl with pepsin. And because, you know, if you have protein in your stomach and you have low stomach acid and you're not able to break down, because proteins require stomach acid and pepsin to break down the food, where if you're not eating protein, it doesn't require as much stomach acid to break it down. And so if you're eating a meal that's lacking in protein, you probably don't need as much HCl. But if you are having, let's say, you know, who knows, 15 ounces, that's a lot, but 8 ounces of chicken breast for lunch, that betaine HCl with pepsin could help you digest that protein. So that's what I would suggest, is to try taking some of that and seeing if maybe you just are low on stomach acid and need that stomach acid to help you digest your food, is another idea.
It is true. I have to say, it's not something I would normally do first. I tend to go more for the digestive bitters first, because sometimes it's about retraining the body to produce its own stomach and just getting that cephalic response back and the action of the vagus nerve and things. And sometimes if somebody is already having the heartburn and they've got the irritation there, then the actual betaine and pepsin can make that irritation a bit worse. But if the digestive bitters aren't enough, then yeah, trying to move on to something that like a betaine, and just start really low dose on that, because obviously you're taking acid, so starting low and building it up gradually.
So talk about the digestive bitters just for a little bit of how do you take them, when do you take them, of, you know, like right before you're about to eat, and what is your favorite kind of brand that you like?
Okay, there's a few different combinations, and the idea is that you take them about 10 to 20 minutes before a meal. They come as a liquid. Now you can get capsule versions of some of these herbs, but in this case, if you're trying to support the stomach and stomach acid production, you need it as a liquid. So it comes as a tincture, and you would put the drops into a little bit of water, hold it in your mouth, and it tastes bitter. It really does. But that stimulates the bitter taste on your tongue, which then tells the vagus nerve, and that goes down to the stomach. So you're sending these nerve messages down to your stomach. And so it starts to produce the gastric juices in response to that bitter taste. So that when you eat the food, the stomach is already ready and the gastric juices are there, so they can get to work digesting your food properly. And some of the bitters like Centauri, that also has a toning effect on the lower esophageal sphincter, that ring of muscle at the top of the stomach, so helping that to close properly and keep the food and the acid in the stomach rather than it refluxing back up again. I've got, which one have I got? Nature's Answer. Do you have that Nature's Answer in America?
I've heard that one. I've heard of Urban Moonshine. Have you heard of that one?
No, I've not heard of that one. I'm sure there's lots of them. I tend to go for Nature's Answer or Viridian or Avogel. They do some different ones as well. So they tend to have very similar herbs in, so yarrow, Centauri, dandelion, and they tend to be kind of on a theme of those. Sometimes I might have ginger in there as well. I would avoid anything with peppermint, because peppermint can relax that muscle at the top of the stomach, and so that can actually make heartburn worse for some people. But going for those bitters is really helpful. If you forget to take them before your meal, you can take them afterwards, just as soon as possible afterwards, so that it is going to still work on that food that is in your stomach. I wouldn't do them kind of an hour after food though.
So how long are you putting it just in your mouth before you swallow it?
If you can do about 30 seconds, that's brilliant. But it does taste bitter, so some people can't, and they just kind of knock it back. That's fine, you know, you're still going to get an effect from it. But if you can allow that taste to circulate in your mouth, then it's helping to stimulate the nerves.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Just listening to you talk is just soothing. I love your accent so much. So where can our listeners go to follow you and your work?
Okay, so I can be found at www.nutritioninyork.co.uk. That's my website. And then I have a free Facebook group, which is also called Nutrition in York. And yeah, if you want to join, just apply to join. And like I say, there's a couple of questions, just quick questions to answer, and then that's it, you're in the group. There's also a Facebook page of the same name as well. And I'm on Twitter, which is at Nutrition in York. So it's all the same name. Just remember Nutrition in York.
Awesome. And if you have a question that you want answered, go to questions@chantelrayway.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.